4 pages on a white grid. I don't even know how to read.
Me neither, dude. It's insane, dude. I can't.
Jamie. You seen this?
What's that, bro? Is it a hobo?
I think that's a hobo.
Oh my god.
What's he doing?
Hey,
Hey, sir, you want to be in a Botany and Bathrobes video?
Huh?
A Botany and Bathrobes video.
Is there money?
Yeah, there's money.
Is there food?
Yeah, there's gonna be food.
Is it lit?
yes, sir.
Here, take my debit card and take this copy of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey, copyright 1962.
Hello and welcome to the latest segment of Botany and Bathrobes, Hobos Reading Summaries.
Chief Bromden, the half-Indian narrator of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, has been a patient in an Oregon psychiatric hospital for 10 years. His paranoia is evident from the first lines of the book, and he suffers from hallucinations and delusions. The mental patients, all male, are divided into acutes, who can be cured, and chronics, who cannot be cured. They are ruled by Nurse Ratched, a former Army nurse who runs the ward with a harsh, mechanical precision. During daily group meetings, she encourages the acutes to attack each other in their most vulnerable places, shaming them into submission. At first, the confrontation between Ratched and McMurphy provided entertainment for the other patients. However, McMurphy's insubordination soon stimulated the rest of them into rebellion. McMurphy eventually learns that involuntary committed patients are stuck in the hospital until the staff decides they are cured. When McMurphy realizes that he is in Nurse Ratched's mercy, he begins to submit to her authority. By this time, however, he has unintentionally become a leader for the other patients. They are confused when he stops standing up for them. Cheswick, dismayed when McMurphy fails to join him in a stand against Nurse Ratched, drowns in the pool in a possible suicide. Cheswick's death signals to McMurphy that he has unwittingly taken on the responsibility of rehabilitating the other patients. He also witnesses the harsh reality of electroshock therapy and becomes genuinely frightened by the power wielded by the staff. Nevertheless, in Part 3, McMurphy arranges a fishing trip for himself and 10 other patients. He shows them how to defuse the hostility of the outside world and enables them to feel powerful and masculine as they catch large fish without his help. He also arranges for Billy Bibbit to lose his virginity later in the novel by making a date between Billy and Candy Starr, a prostitute from Portland. Back on the ward in Part 4, McMurphy reignites the rebellion by getting into a fistfight with the aides to defend George Sorensen. Bromden joins in, and they are both sent to the disturbed ward for electroshock therapy. McMurphy asks as if the shock treatments do not affect him, and his heroic reputation grows. Nurse Ratched brings them back to the ward, and so the other patients can see his weakened state. The patients urge McMurphy to escape, but he has arranged Billy's date for that night, and he refuses to let Billy down. The aides discover the mess the next morning, setting off a series of violent events. When Nurse Ratched finds Billy with Candy, she threatens to tell Billy's mother. Billy becomes hysterical and commits suicide by cutting his throat. McMurphy then attacks Ratched, ripping open the front of her dress and attempting to strangle her. In retaliation, she has him lobotomized, and he returns to the ward as a vegetable. However, Ratched has lost her tyrannical power over the ward. The patients transfer to other wards or check themselves out of the hospital. Bromden then suffocates McMurphy in his bed, enabling him to die with some dignity, rather than live as a symbol of Ratched's power. Bromden, having recovered the immense strength he had believed lost during his time in the mental ward, escaped from the hospital by breaking through the window.
Oh hey, Reload students! Welcome back to an insane and electrifying episode of Botany and Bathrobes. I'm your host, Archibald, and this is my compatriot, Bartholomew, and today we'll be discussing and reviewing the American novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, by LSD addict and marijuana lover, Ken Kesey.
Ken Kesey wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest as a part of the Beats literary movement, one which rejected conventional social norms and protested the government's lack of concern for certain neglected categories of society, the insane, the criminal, the homeless, etc., as well as the government's intervention in the Vietnam War, because of its commitment to abolish communism while maintaining an opposition to totalitarian regimes. Kesey's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is based largely upon his experiences with mental patients. Through the conflict between Nurse Ratched and Randall McMurphy, the novel explores the themes of individuality and rebellion against conformity. ideas that were widely discussed at the time when the United States was committed to opposing communism and totalitarian regimes around the world. However, Kesey's approach, directing criticism directly at American institutions themselves, was revolutionary in a way that would find greater expression during the 60s. The novel, published in 1962, was an immediate success.
The character Chief Bromden narrates One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Although he says he's telling a story about the hospital and her and the guys, and about McMurphy, he's also telling the story of his own journey towards sanity. When the novel begins, Bromden is paranoid, bullied, and surrounded most of the time by hallucinated fog that represents both his medicated state and his desire to hide from reality. Moreover, he believes that he's extremely weak, even though he used to be immensely strong. But because he believes it, he is extremely weak. By the end of the novel, the fog is cleared, and Bromden has recovered the personal strength to euthanize McMurphy, escape from the hospital, and record his own account of the events. It's like what Chief Bromden once said aloud. Period.
And now on to our next segment, featuring Bartholomew's Late Night Botany Bungalow.
Oh hey, you caught me hiding from the Viet Cong. Don't worry about it. Anyways, let's talk about one of the novel's most important themes, women as castrators. With the exception of the prostitutes, who are portrayed as good, the women in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest are uniformly threatening and terrifying figures. Bromden, the narrator of the novel, and McMurphy, the protagonist, both tend to describe the suffering of the mental patients as a matter of emasculation or castration at the hands of Nurse Ratched and the hospital supervisor, who is also a woman. The fear of women is one of the most novel's central features. The male characters seem to agree with Harding, another patient at the ward, who complains, "We are a victim of matriarchy here." Indeed, most of the patients have been damaged by relationships with overpowering women. For instance, Bromden's mother is portrayed as a castrating woman. Her husband took her last name, and she turned a big, strong chief into a small, weak alcoholic. According to Bromden, she built herself up emotionally, becoming bigger than either he or his father by constantly putting them down. Similarly, Billy Bibbitt's mother treats him like an infant and does not allow him to develop sexually. Through sex with Candy, a prostitute in the novel, Billy briefly regains his confidence. It is no coincidence that this act, which symbolically resurrects his manhood, also literally introduces his to sexual activity. Thus, his manhood, in both senses, returns until Ratched takes it away by threatening to tell his mother and driving him to commit suicide.
John! Oh, hey. Sorry, reupload students, I was just having a Vietnam flashback. Time to get back to some character analysis. We'll be starting out with Nurse Ratched. As a former army nurse, Nurse Ratched represents the oppressive mechanization, dehumanization, and emasculation of modern society. Bromden describes Ratched as being like a machine, and her behavior fits this description. Even her name is reminiscent of a mechanical tool, sounding both like ratchet and wretched. She enters the novel and the ward with a gust of cold. Ratched has almost complete control over every aspect of the ward, as well as almost complete control over her own emotions. In the first few pages, we see her show her hideous self to Bromden and the aides, only to regain a doll-like composure before any of the patients catch a glimpse. Her ability to present a false sense of self suggests that the mechanistic and oppressive forces in her society gain ascendance through dishonesty of the powerful. Without being aware of the oppression, the quiet and docile slowly become weakened and gradually are subdued. Ooh, she's a piece of work, guys. She's a real piece of work. When I was in Nam, right, we were on a mission, right? There's this one little girl I met in this town once, right? We were just raping and pillaging all over the place, right? So we get into this town, right? This little girl, she shows me this doll. It's a nurse doll. And this is just after I'd read the novel, so I look at that doll and I burned it. That little girl cried. And she ended up dying, but the moral of that story is Nurse Ratched, she's a woo! Crazy. So that's basically a lot of analysis right there in the little anecdote. Thank you.
Finally, let's discuss some of the most prevalent symbols in the novel, starting with the fog machine. Fog is a phenomenon that clouds our vision of the world. In the novel, fog symbolizes a lack of insight and an escape from reality. When Bromden starts to slip away from reality into the fog, because of his medication or out of fear, he hallucinates fog drifting into the ward. He imagines that there are hidden fog machines and events that are controlled by the staff. Although it can be frightening at times, Bromden considers the fog to be a safe place. Beyond what it means for Bromden, the fog represents the state of mind that Ratchet imposes on the patients with her strict, mind-numbing routines and humiliating treatment. When McMurphy arrives, he drags all the patients out of the fog. Finally, let's discuss the electroshock therapy table. The electroshock therapy table is explicitly associated with crucifixion. It is shaped like a cross, with straps across the wrists and over the head. Moreover, the table performs a function similar to the public crucifixions of Roman times. Ellis, Ruckley, and Tabor, all patients, acutes whose lives destroyed by electroshock therapy, serve as public examples of what happens to those who rebel against the ruling powers. Ellis makes the reference explicit. He is actually nailed to the wall. This foreshadows that McMurphy, who is associated with the Christ image, will be sacrificed.
Oh hey, good students. Thanks for joining us on an insane and crazy late-night episode of Botany and Bathrobes.
That's right, Archibald. And in the words of Miss Lurs,
It's been lit, fam.
Well, that's all for this episode of Botany and Bathrobes. Join us next week when we discuss the intricacies of Panamanian interpretive dance and the validity of vegetables as a lubricant. And if you want more episodes, go to www.beardedbushwarriors.com. Thanks for watching.